Good afternoon, very welcome to this session on Horizon Europe and the opportunities for the creative industries within the European framework for innovation and research, Horizon Europe. My name is Natália. I am the national contact point for the Cluster 2, which focus on culture, creativity, and inclusive society of the Horizon Europe. I work for the National Agency for Innovation, ANI, Agência Nacional de Inovação. So here I present you a structure, an overall structure of the Horizon Europe, just for you to have an idea how is it divided and composed. And it has got three pillars, main pillars, pillar 1, 2, and 3. And here are also the budgets for each. And so the first pillar focus on excellent science, and the pillar 2 on global challenges and European industrial competitiveness, and the pillar 3 on innovative Europe. Our focus here is on pillar 2, on the cluster 2. And here are the different clusters that are composed the pillar 2. This pillar tries to answer to has a top-down approach, tries to answer to societal challenges and industrial technologies, and reflects the European and international policies. And here, as I said, we're going to talk about the cluster 2, and just very generally, what is it the Horizon Europe about, and what can we do with the funding of Horizon Europe? This is for big research and innovation international projects that typically have a duration of 3 years, and the minimum is 3 partners from different countries, and then there are specific rules on which countries, etc., but we're not going to that detail in this session. Usually there are more than 3 partners in each consortium, and typically the amount of the funding for each project is more than 2 million euros. For applying, we have to have objectives and propose activities and results that are proportional to the budget and the size of the call that is already announced in each call, what is going to be the amount, and what are all the objectives, and all the proposal has to answer exactly to all that is written in the topic description. In the projects, of course, must be very innovative and very ambitious. And who is this for? Who can apply? Research centers, universities, city councils, industry, ONGs, any association, policy makers, government, and others. So basically, this is for everyone. And what we need to have in mind, and that is the focus must be multidisciplinary, and it's a multi-actors approach. The involvement of many stakeholders, and including end users, is very important. So that is the main characteristics of the applications and the projects for Horizon Europe in a very, very general way. Now, focusing on the cluster 2 that we are going to debate and to talk about here today, what are the main objectives are meeting EU goals and priorities in order to enhance democratic governance and citizen participation, and safeguard and promote cultural heritage, and respond to and shape social, economic, technological, and cultural transformations. And then, so the cluster is divided according to these objectives in 3 destinations. The democracy and governance destination, and then the destination that we're going to talk about in more detail here, it's European cultural heritage and cultural and creative industries, and economical and social transformations. So what are the main challenges that destination 2 tries to address? First, that there is a social fabric and collective consciousness of our societies that is eroding. The cultural heritage is at risk. It's losing its role and in strengthening the sense of belonging and fostering shared value. And the cultural heritage is facing huge challenges due mainly to climate change, to pollution, etc. And also another issue is that the European cultural industries have not innovated and they have not been competitive enough in an international stage. So what is expected with this program and these calls and this funding from the European Commission? That the full potential of cultural heritage, arts and cultural and creative sectors may be a driver of sustainable innovation, and that they may foster a sense, an European sense of belonging through an engagement of the society and through the engagement of citizens and in companies, as well as through better protection of the cultural heritage and restoration and promotion of this heritage of Europe. So now, here is the list of the topics that are open in this year, 2021, then that people, these are the competitions that people can apply to get funding for their research and innovation actions. And so here we have 4 topics for this year that focus on green technologies and materials for cultural heritage, and also on the sustainable financing of museums, or also on the cultural and creative industries as a driver for innovation and competitiveness, and preserving and enhancing cultural heritage with advanced digital technologies. Next year, because this work program is for 2021 and 2022, we have more topics that focus in various areas. And we have one, for example, on the European Bauhaus that Nuno Nunes is going to talk about in more detail in a short while. Now, what is very important to know is that the application to these topics that I just showed before, it's done online on the Commission's portal called Funding and Tenders Portal. And the calls are open right now, and they will be open until October the 9th. These are for the cost for 2021. For 2022, they will open on the 20th of January, and they will close on the April 20th. More details can be found in the Funding and Tenders portal, or you can contact us as well at ANI. So what do we advise for you to be successful in applying to Horizon Europe? It's very important to keep yourself up to date with all the calls, all the requirements. For this, we recommend you subscribe our mailing list and also be part of a group. There is a national group for discussion of the European framework that is called Gabinete. And also, through this, you also can receive our newsletter. We send all the news and all the important things to know about the Cluster 2. And you can also check the Funding and Tenders portal, which has got all the calls, and also that's where, as I said, you submit your proposals. It's also convenient and very useful to register as a Commission's expert. So you become an evaluator of proposals. So this way you can see how the proposals are written, and you also have a chance of networking. It's a very good thing for you, and I recommend everyone to register as an evaluator. And you also should look at every opportunity to enlarge your network. Go to meetings, to brokerage events, to info days. And here I want to highlight that we have the Info Day for Cluster 2, which is a big information day organized by the European Commission on the 1st of July, so this Thursday. And then there is a brokerage event for Cluster 2 on the 2nd of July. So if you are planning to apply for this year's calls, or even for next year, you can still, and you are still on time, to schedule meetings with potential partners. You just need to register in the web page. Here it is, the web page where you can register, and you can see all the information, the info days and the brokerage events. it's very important to look for partners, and here you can use a tool at the Commission's, the Portal and Funding website has got the tool for looking for partners, where you can also post your own profile and make yourself visible to others. And there's also a network of the national NCPs on the social and human sciences website, where also there are profiles for people who are looking to participate in the Horizon Europe. And there's other links that I put here that you can use for looking and also for putting your profile on. And of course, you need always to reach out to your network, and you cannot just be expecting to be contacted, but you can also be active and contact other people. Look for, if you don't have still a good network of international network, you can look for leaders and experts in fields of expertise different from yours, and introduce yourself and your idea. And of course, in all the proposals for Horizon Europe, you have to take into account a good distribution in terms of geography, also it has to be multidisciplinary, and everything has to be very complementary in terms of the skills that each team has and which will bring to the project. And of course, what I recommend also, you can reach to your national contact points. And here is the team of Cluster 2 of national contact points. And we are very willing and very happy to help you and to inform you and to discuss with you your idea and to help navigate in the portals, the funding and portals portal, and in the work program, and we are very available to help, so please reach out. And the main NCPs are Margarida Oliveira and myself, Natália Dias. Thank you. So now I'm going to pass the word to, let me look for the slide, for Nuno Nunes, from Instituto Superior Técnico, Técnico Lisbon, who is talking about the new European Bauhaus. I'm going to, how do I put a link? Ah, já está aqui. Está feito. Okay.
Okay, good afternoon, everybody. I'm actually not going to talk about the new European Bauhaus, but more about the vision of the new European Bauhaus that we have designed together with my colleagues Miguel, Mariana, Frederica, and Heitor, and which has benefited a lot from the brilliant design of Zé Albergaria that you can see there. And it's actually an interpretation of what could be the new European Bauhaus for Portugal, an interpretation that we believe takes advantage of the principles of the new European Bauhaus, which is sustainable, beautiful, and inclusive, and applies them to the context of Portugal and tries to make it more aligned with what we can offer to this European initiative. I wanted to tell you that unlike many of the other initiatives that Natália was just showing, this one is bottom-up. So it kind of, the EU is asking for ideas, for contributions, in order to shape what the new European Bauhaus is going to be. And when some time ago, actually, Maria Miguel was involved in an initial group brainstorming the idea of the new European Bauhaus here in Portugal, when we started thinking about that, we said that if the EU wanted to do something about sustainability, it will be impossible not to look at the oceans, because the oceans are the most important element in the planet regarding sustainability. They represent the 1/3 of the CO2 captured. They are the place where a big portion of the European population lives. More than 40% of people in Europe live in coastal cities and coastal regions. By the way, according to Chinese standards, Portugal is all coastal because nobody lives more than 50 kilometers from the ocean. So if someone is going to say it's not inclusive of Portugal because, you know, Bragança is not in the coast, it is a coastal region by Chinese standards at least. And also because even if you don't live in the coastal area, most likely you will be spending your vacations in coastal areas. So the oceans are very important, and as a kind of one of the people whose voice everybody recognizes, who has been talking about this for more than 19 years, is David Attenborough, because the oceans are not just water, they are a living entity. Sorry, for some reason this is not playing.
They also influence almost every aspect of our lives, from the oxygen in the air to petrol in our cars and the landscape around us.
So like David Attenborough was saying, they influence everything in our lives. Even if we don't live next to the ocean, our life depends on the ocean. And those that like to be in the ocean, I was not born in an island, I was born in Porto, but lived most of my life in an island in Madeira. And for me, even the smell of the ocean is very special. And I'm sure all of you that spent some time in the ocean know that that smell is different. That smell is actually created by these bacteria, by this phytoplankton that you can see there. So in case anyone wonders why the Bauhaus of the Seas will be a very inclusive project for Europe, you can see the map of the coastal regions in Europe. And you can also see the intensity of economic activities in tourism, for instance, and how they are very much focused on coastal areas. So the seas and the oceans are very important. The question is, why a Bauhaus of the Seas? And we have been asked this question many times by many people, including ministers that could not understand why. And the idea is that they face many challenges. So even if you are in a city inland, and this is a project actually that is a project called Plastic Pirates, where children understand that the sea starts there. The sea starts in any place that you can throw something into a gutter that will end up most likely in the sea. And also, before anyone says, okay, why a lot of beautiful architectural projects that have been happening, the High Line in New York is one example, many beautiful examples. Well, our cities are not like New York. And I love New York, but they are very different, and they face many different challenges. This is what could happen in many of our cities, is a drone footage from Easy Ride in Saint-Malo, which is an area in France, which is very exposed to the high tides. And you can see what can happen in the near future in many other cities in Europe. And you cannot build something to prevent this. And you need to protect our cultural heritage, which, like Natália was saying, is a very important asset of Europe. So but the seas are not only problems, and it's not only sea rise, it's not only plastics, they also provide a lot of interesting solutions for sustainability. And if we could use this relationship that we can have with the sea as a way to bootstrap, to augment nature-based solutions for climate action, we would find interesting solutions that we need to pay attention to. This is one of my favorite examples, is the whales. If we recover the population of whales to the values of pre-whaling, we would have an impact that is many times the impact of reforesting a whole Amazon forest. One whale, just through 70 years of her lifespan, will capture 33 tons of CO2. And when she dies, she goes to the bottom. So we are actually literally capturing carbon when we do that. But not only the whale will capture all of that carbon, but it will have multiplier effects in the whole ecosystem. The whales bring nutrients from the deep sea into the surface. They bring nutrients from the North Poles to the Ecuador, and they act as ecosystems engineers. And why is this relevant? And what's happening with whales? Whaling is almost forbidden in most of the countries, but whales are recovering, it's true. But if you look at coastal areas, you will see that coastal areas provide one of the greatest threats to whales. This is an amazing animation of a blue whale in Chile trying to feed, and you see all of those boats, which are actually one of the most important threats to the whales. And again, I'm using the example of whales because I'm doing research on whales, and because in the cultural domain, we all know that whales have an iconic value. I mean, whales have almost been a symbol of the green movement. You know, from Moby Dick, the whale as a monster, to Free Willy, the whale as something that we need to connect, to now whales. This is the whale in Bruges, where you can see the impact of whales in terms of cultural and iconic value. So this vision that we created, the vision of the Bauhaus of the Seas, or Marhaus or Baumar, we never chose, because it's always good to tell people to choose and to talk about it, because that's what we wanted to do, is to provoke people, to ask people what would they do if they had this vision, is to promote this renewed ethical and aesthetic development with our relationship with the ocean. And our relationship with the ocean is very strong. What does this have to do in terms of research? I'm a computer scientist, I'm an engineer, so I do sensors, I put sensors on whales, and I try to visualize that, and I try to connect to people. I was just talking, we have a project also related to social inclusion here with Mapa das Ideias in Lisbon, trying to use technologies to include people from migrants communities, which also, again, are an example of a consequence of climate change. Many of these people that are migrants to Europe are coming and running away from the consequences of climate change. So what we want to do is not to say the new European Bauhaus is about the physical environment. It's about rebuilding. It's about new materials. It's about, you know, doing more of the same, which is actually what took us here. It should not be just about the physical world. It should not just be about, you know, making ciclovias and making people cycle, which is also important. But if we think that the new European Bauhaus is going to be just about building, we are going to create another problem instead of solving a new problem. So what we are trying to bring together is these other two worlds to the new European Bauhaus, the digital world, through sensors, through ways of showing and capturing information that enables us to make better decisions about what's happening with our environment, and also to nature, to integrate nature into the new European Bauhaus. Let me give you a few examples. This was actually in the conference we organized, the slide that Michel Magas showed. If you go on Google Maps to this place, which is one of the most rich and diverse places in Europe, you see that. It's completely blue. There's nothing there. If you put on a satellite image, you actually see this. Does anyone know where this is? No. This is in Aveiro. And so this shows how our digital systems are representing values that for Google, this is worth nothing. There is no shops, no restaurants, no streets, nothing. But it's one of the most rich ecosystems in Portugal mainland. And so this is why we mean by mapping and making sure that we identify these values and make them visible to people when they are using digital technologies. And so this is what we mean by recognizing the environment. We need to develop new tools that make people recognize the environment around them. They make them understand that there is biodiversity, that there are things that need to be protected, which are mostly invisible to our digital tools. Here's an example from one of my own projects, where we actually mapped the flows of tourism in Madeira and tried to create a public visualization of the impacts of tourism in the island. So, you know, a lot of people, 3,000 people arriving on a cruise ship, and we studied the impacts of that. And that's, again, a consequence of being able to understand before we redesign our cities. Second, reconciling with the sea. Looking at the sea as an opportunity to create new ways of relationship with the seas. And this is an amazing video of the wave in Nazaré. Before it became one of the most important iconic examples of Portugal, it was a place that was damned. The people from Nazaré thought this place was not a place to be. They were scared of this place. It's a scary place. But, you know, by reconnecting with this place, it suddenly became something beautiful. Just by looking at that place and protecting that wave, like we are trying to do in Portugal, protecting many waves is important to make us give value to what is really, really fundamental. And protecting this wave is very important, but in order for people to understand that this wave is important, it was needed that surf became an important activity and attracts people, attracts tourism, attracts younger generations to work in Portugal. I know because many of my students, instead of studying, go surfing. Another example, one of my favorites, is André Jacques, who designed, is an architect. He designed a house in Laguna Grande in Houston. It's a house designed to promote biodiversity. So the house was not built for people. People can live there, but the house was built to promote biodiversity in that place. How does it do that? With sensors. It detects when there's water is needed, so it captures water and feeds the soil around it. Other examples, another architect, Kunle Adeyemi, a very famous architect in Nigeria, who created this floating school in the lagoon in Nigeria, which won an important award. So there are opportunities to build and connect to the ocean. And last but not least, recognizing communities. And again, we already talked about the problem of migration. This is an important installation by IYY. By the way, if you have not seen, go there and check his show here in Cultura. Thank you. And he brought the jackets of the people, of the migrants, and put them in the Berlin Concept Plus. And many other examples. Another example that I like very much from Deli Adeyemo, another architect, who mapped the voyage of the slaves from Africa to Madeira and created this beautiful movie that is available about this voyage of these slaves and how they imagined their trip to Madeira. Okay, a place where nobody says they were slaves, but they were there. And many other examples. This is another example from Portugal. We have amazing examples of this new relationship with the ocean that is worth praising and augmenting. This one is with the women, the communities of women that work to promote the sargasso, which is again a natural solution for climate change. And finally, this should enable us to renew practices, and that's where we reach. The consortium we are building, which is open to collaborations from many institutions, so if you are interested, please reach out and we will try to accommodate, already involves Lisbon and Oeiras in Portugal. It involves many schools, many other cultural institutions, Gulbenkian, Fundação Oceano, and many others. And it also involves Venice. So the next conference is going to be in September in Venice. And the city of Venice, together also now with Genova, has joined the consortium. And this is an amazing photo of Veneziano Zero by Andrea Morucchio, which shows the fact that that city, which was completely overwhelmed by tourism, suddenly stopped. And it made people reflect. The same thing happened here in Lisbon. You know, the dolphins came back to the River Tagus. And again, that's a good example connecting to what I was showing with the whales. And so the vision that we've developed is to build a culture of the Bauhaus of the Seas as a school ship, as a movement that will go from one coastal city to the next coastal city, which will include designers, architects, engineers, agents from the creative people. You know, it will be a movement that will that we symbolically put on a ship, and that Miguel wants to actually build a ship. Whether he will get funding for that, we will not know. But the idea is that we need to take our heads from the sand. This is a famous artist who does sculptures underwater, and join efforts and try to do something for the Bauhaus of the Seas in Portugal, I hope, and for New European Bauhaus as a whole. Thank you.
Thank you, Nuno, for such an inspiring talk. Now we're going to hear Nancy Duxbury from the Center of Social Studies of the University of Coimbra, who is going to talk about the value of culture. Let me just, this mouse.
Thank you. It's a bit frightening. Thank you for this invitation to participate today. I'm honored. I was asked to speak about Quanto, vale, Cultura, which I translated as how do we value culture, or how is culture valued is another alternative. And I'm going to very quickly, you can tell me when my time's up, talk to you about the project Uncharted. The full title is Understanding, Capturing, and Fostering the Societal Value of Culture. It is a European project that was funded under Horizon 2020, that is in year 2, I believe. So culture and the arts are discussed and evaluated through a plurality of values, and values form the foundational principles of appreciation, judgment, and measure. By way of brief background, over the 20th century, there have been various transformations in society have led to culture being increasingly central and prominent in society. Since the 1960s, cultural policies have given more emphasis on extrinsic values, social individual values of culture beyond cultural excellence. And more recently, in the context of the rise of neoliberalism, the economic value of culture has become dominant, obscuring other values of culture with negative consequences. In this context, Uncharted is part of a reaction against the predominance of economic value, both in the social representation of cultural value and in cultural management. The proposal, this project tries to provide a broader vision of the societal value of culture in the European context. So the general approach for the project is interdisciplinary, it's grounded in the understanding that to understand the plurality of the values that are at play, it's important to understand the wide variety of people who are involved in evaluating culture, the multiplicity of agents, and the conditions and the situations under which they conduct these valuations. Overall, it focuses on 3 main areas: the citizenry and the cultural participants, the cultural producers and the professionals, the organizations in the cultural sector, and cultural administration, which ties policy and administration. The project itself, as I mentioned, is part of Horizon 2020. It's a 4-year project that will be completing in January 2024. It has 9 partners from 7 countries. It's coordinated by the University of Barcelona, but in Portugal it has 2 partners, Centro de Estudos Sociais at Coimbra and the University of Porto. It has 4 main specific aims. The first is at a really macro level to examine the influence of a series of circumstances and key factors in shaping the values of culture in Europe. This component has been completed and the reports are available freely on the project website. Then the next stage is really more micro, and this is where we are now. It's to identify the plurality of values that emerge in cultural practices. What do people say is important to them as they're participating or as they're in their cultural evaluation processes? And then to understand the tensions between the values that are articulated by the various actors involved. And finally, there's a policy component that will assess and build alternate frameworks to guide policies and institutions to respond and foster these to acknowledge these broader array of values, not just economic ones. So in brief, the focus is, sorry, this is hard to breathe. Excuse me. This is not so easy to read anymore. Okay. The focus is on the practice of assessment and evaluation and the environments in which this occurs. We adopt a comparative case study methodology and are using a wide variety of research methods, techniques. In reflecting the 3 different groups of actors, we have 4 fundamental arenas of cultural practice that are being examined, and in each area there are 2 partners working in collaboration. cultural participation in live arts and culture. That's the area that we were given, which of course was written before the COVID pandemic, so it's been a particularly challenging one this last year. Cultural participation through media, another area that changed completely in the last year. Cultural production and heritage management, and cultural administration. So within the scope of cultural participation in live arts and culture, the SEJ team has chosen 2 case studies to examine. One is culture-based creative tourism, looking particularly at Lole Creativo by the municipality of Lole, and a community-engaged arts project, De Portas Abertas by Otirão in Coimbra. The main questions that we're asking concern what are the social values of culture that participants and the professional organizers identify in practice, not what's in the cultural policy rhetoric, but what is identified in practice, both personal experiences and values, as well as what they ascribe for the broader value for society. And how do these values vary? Depending on the types of participants, their roles and positions, their social characteristics and life trajectories, and the degrees of institutionalization of cultural projects involved. What are the processes of valuation and the tensions between the values that are identified, and what changes in valuations of cultural participation are expressed by participants in relation to the COVID-19 pandemic context? This, I won't go into a lot of detail, but this is a summary of the values that we've identified in the initial case, in the initial interviews with participants in the culture-based creative tourism project activities, as well as community-engaged arts activities. We've organized them roughly into 3 frames: values relating to the internal or the personal level, the second is external or social level, and the third is broader than that, the contextual or political values. I'll give some more examples. These 3, the 3 frames have enabled us to help organize a wide variety of items, but also what we're noticing is there are interconnections between the different levels or frames, which we think is quite interesting in rethinking how we value culture and what value it provides for society. So some of the cross-cutting themes that we've identified in our initial analysis include repeated statements about emotional connection, imagination, and social representations, and the lead from one to another. An importance of participating in cultural activities to share knowledge and know-how. And particularly in the Lole Creativo example case, we've noticed there's a real generational comparison that's interesting, where the older participants and artisans are key to use the activity and the making activity to connect back in time and memories, whereas the younger generations participants are looking at the same techniques and same craft work as tied to sustainability going forward. We also hear refrains about empowerment, from the importance of cultural participation for personal empowerment, to contribute to collective agency, and also to linking to socio-political objectives, trying out experimentation of activities that can be an example for others more broadly. We find there are tensions between values, and we're in the process of examining this, and the primacy of aesthetic values is in question, particularly as the in-presence, sociability, and interaction dimension is accentuated by the COVID-19 period, where people were not able to participate in cultural organizations, or cultural activities in person. Just to close, to zoom out again, the project itself has examined these macro patterns of societal change and how it's influenced the cultural valuation practices of Europe today. At this point, we're examining the plurality of values that come out of cultural participation and cultural practice by participants. That's our focus. We're examining the tensions that we're seeing within our cases, but also comparing them with our partner cases coming out of France, which they've selected 2 cases as well. We're also comparing the valuation processes of people participating in live cultural activity with those same, with valuations that are given for others who have participated in cultural activities by media over the last year with another 2 teams. And then, of course, putting values that come out of from participants in contrast and comparison with those of the cultural producers and the heritage management institutions, as well as the cultural policymakers who are making decisions on how they are choosing to support cultural activities and develop policies. And then, and then the final section will follow on from all of that tension comparison. But there's layers upon layers. It gives a little glimpse of how large these European projects really are. And when you're assigned a little piece, you have to stand back and see how focus on the little piece and the many, many details of this. And then these are the building blocks of sand almost for this larger construction to happen in the future. And thank you. January 2024. At this point, we've had 1 meeting right before in February to launch the project, and lots of online meetings since. We have a workshop, the first, we hope, face-to-face workshop in September in Porto, actually, being organized by the University of Porto, for us to take the findings of work package 1, which was the big macro picture, and the findings of the case studies to date, and have them confronted by cultural practitioners, policymakers, and other stakeholders of the project, and then we continue. It's definitely a moving piece at this time. Thank you. Oops, I lost there we go.
Thank you, Nancy, very much, and I wish you much success for your very timely topic of your project, and that you will have a lot of interesting results. Next, we will have a round table, which will be moderated by Maria Miguel from the Office of the Minister of Culture, and we'll have some 3 participants in the round table: Inês from Mapa das Ideias, André Lourenço, Luís from Trojan Horse Was a Unicorn, and Mariana Duarte Silva, Village Underground, Lisboa. So they will present their perspectives and experiences on how can we move forward with this creative sector, and how can we contribute, this sector can contribute to development and to innovation and to other sectors, and to have an impact in other sectors of the society and economy. So please, Maria Miguel, the floor is yours.
Boa tarde. Good afternoon to you all. Thank you to Agência Nacional de Inovação for the invitation to have this chat. My name is Maria Miguel. I'm an advisor to the Minister of Culture, and we've been working closely together with Agência Nacional de Inovação in order to increase the participation of cultural and creative industries in European funding. So we would like to see a lot more projects like the one Nancy just presented, or the one Nuno is hoping to move forward. With me today, I have the honor of having, maybe I'll start from the other top of the table, Mariana Duarte Silva. She's the founder of Village Underground. She'll explain better than myself what that is in a moment. We have André Lourenço. He is the founder of a thing called Trojan Horse Was a Unicorn. He'll also explain what that is. And Inês Betancourt Câmara, the founder of Mapa das Ideias, which is over 20 years old and has done a lot of interesting things. She'll also be explaining. So maybe we'll start with Mariana. Would you like to introduce yourself, please?
Yes. Hello, everyone. So my name is Mariana. I'm the founder of this place in Lisbon, which is next door, called Village Underground Lisboa. It is a creative arts center that it's also a place for co-working, events, especially music, and it's a restaurant. I opened it 7 years ago after I worked in the same project in London, where it existed more than 10 years. And so the journey became when I arrived back from London and I wanted to do the same project in Lisbon. I arrived in 2009, and Lisbon and all Portugal actually was, as you remember, in a deep financial crisis. It was all very gloomy, and so I ended up waiting 5 years of a big struggle and fight to finally make it happen in 2014. So we are now running it for 7 years successfully with private money. It's a private company, and it's basically our a get-together space in Lisbon for cultural and arts, and as I said, more focused in music, live concerts, DJs, and music, theater, performances. In 2018, we decided to open another project in Village, which is a school. I think we're going to talk maybe a little bit after that. It's a music school for kids from all the backgrounds that started in 2018, and it has developed into a proper school now in April. And for that, I finally got some funding, and I think we're going to talk about that. So I'll leave it there.
Yes.
It's Cultura, the name of the school, sorry.
Yeah, and Mariana is the only person I know who did beta testing of her project in a big market like London, and then went to a smaller market like Portugal to actually roll out the project. But if you've never been to Village Underground, it's just next door and it's worth the visit. André, would you like to introduce yourself, please?
How this works, something like that.
I think
It's working? Okay. So, hello everyone, my name is André Luís. I'm the founder of Trojan Horse Was a Unicorn. That is nowadays a global organization that works in the digital entertainment industry. And our mission is to empower creators to be successful in their career. More or less, I started this in 2013. After I left a school, I was the founder of the first computer graphics school in Portugal. And after a while, I started to have a lot of cool talents, but the market at the time didn't had they were not hired by anyone in Portugal, and trying to find someone outside to hire our service, we are talking about the visual effects industry or games industry, was pretty hard. So after travel around the world, giving cards, I realized that because we were in Portugal and there is no industry here, we are not respected enough to have a chance to actually work. So I decided to, my plan was, okay, I will bring everyone to Portugal, introduce myself, and I will have a better chance at the time. And after that, I discovered that we changed away the world of the digital entertainment industry. Nowadays, THU, we have multiple projects where our main partner is Sony, and we work with 100 countries at this moment. What else can I say? Now after 2 years of our main events, went to Malta. We finally returned to Portugal. So it is a big thing for us in a way. And now we are working in several projects again to make sure that we can build the new generation of entrepreneurs in this industry. And I think it's enough. Do you want me to talk about any other thing?
No, that's a good introduction, but he left out something very interesting. I hope you don't get mad at me for saying this, but he once run a football club. So that's also an interesting aspect of his career.
From Premier League, yes.
Inês, you're next, please.
Okay. So, hi everybody. Thank you for the invitation. And it's very nice to be with Maria and Miguel on live, physically sharing a space. Now we really value those kinds of experiences. My name is Inês. I created Mapa das Ideias in 1999. I was 25 at the time, and my background is in social sciences and communication sciences, and that's an important part of what Mapa is, because basically me and my business partner, Anna, she's a sociologist also by training, we thought that we had to create some kind of interface between cultural heritage, museums, and their visitors, because there was this huge civic potential in this relation between knowledge, but also between the pleasure. It's not only about knowledge, but it's also about the pleasure, the physical experience of being in a place, the relation with the objects, and the way that we relate with our past in ways that makes us think about our present and can make us project our future. So this was our mission in 1999. Some days ago, I found some papers, and it was there, and I was really moved. It's the consequences of the isolation, I think, also, because I thought it's still pretty relevant today, after 21, 22 years. Between us, the 2 marriages, 4 kids, so between life happened, but it's still completely what we do. And we started to work with museums and cultural heritage, mainly with the museums that usually don't have a very strong educational mediation service because they're historical, ethnographical, because contemporary art is very well established in that field. We started to do that, and in 2010 we went European, so to speak, so we started to work. We decided that we had a very strong knowledge about museum mediation. It was a methodology that we developed, and we thought that it was in the middle term between education and communication. It had to be like a global vision from the cultural organization. We had developed a methodology, and we wanted to test it and to train more people Europe-wise. And we decided, we never had done anything to do with European funding. And we decided that we were going to apply for transfer of innovation, and we won the project after 2 tries. And we suddenly, with no European project management experience, we were leaders for a 300,000 euro project operating in 5 countries, and it started. So we've been doing this now for 11 years. We have had the most wonderful experiences from that point of view. I'm going to talk about that relating with MEMEX, for example. That has a lot to do with networking and knowledge more than financial sustainability, and that's an important part for our business. And meanwhile, we have the company. The company today has more or less 20 people. And we work in all fields of contact points with the public. We work with educational services, mediation services, audience development, marketing, and we also explore museum shops and merchandising. And we also have a restaurant, because it was one of the parts of the tender. And we said, okay, we'll have a restaurant also. So we make wonderful cappuccinos, wonderful cakes. And one of our best sellers is a cake it's a carrot and ginger cake, because it's at the Maritime Museum, and it talks about the discoveries, right, and the spices. So it's all over the place.
So in our efforts, in our joint efforts to bring more cultural and creative industries agents into the mindset of European funding, we have been struggling with 3 barriers, mostly. The first one is financial literacy. A lot of people and a lot of agents and a lot of players in the creative and cultural industries don't have the know-how or the skill set to be involved in applications to European funding. Their structures are not big enough and are not focused. The second bottleneck that we've been finding is most of the projects that are financed by European funding, by Horizon Europe, for instance, they will fund a percentage of your project, and then you'll need a counterpart of your own financing, of your own, or other partners to put in that money. That's also a bottleneck for a lot of organizations in the cultural and creative industries, because they're not used to dealing with investors and diversify their sources of funding. And there's a third bottleneck, a third difficulty that we have heard while studying why so many organizations have never considered applying to European funding in this sector, in this industry, and it's networking. Like Inês said, networking outside of your own industry sometimes is just not your priority. And when we're talking about Horizon Europe, we're talking about money that's going into investigation and knowledge. And a lot of organizations from cultural and creative industries do not relate with knowledge organizations, with science, with academia. So networking is also a bottleneck. And my first question to Inês is, I understand that at a certain point you decided you wanted to go for European funding, but I mean, how did you overcome these constraints and others that you might have found?
Okay, so, well, I think the first thing is about the mindset. So it's what we usually, and when we talk about even about self-representations, and I'm not talking only about individual, but also organizational self-representations in a certain sense, what we see for our organization, how we are prepared to do that. And I think that the mindset is very important. For us, it wasn't a giant leap in the sense that we understood that it could be accomplished. So it was something that was feasible for one sense, and then on the other, that first project was an Erasmus project. And one of the things that I really feel is that the people, and I'm not saying that because Natália is there in the corner, we're going to ignore her, but our experience is that the people that are at the desks of each program are truly public servants in the best sense of the term. So when we get to the Erasmus agency or Creative Europe or Horizon, we say we have this idea and we really wanted to put it, they never said like, you're delusional, go home. And I have had that experience of people telling me that I'm delusional and go home. I really have. That's a part of my profession.
I feel it.
Yeah. So I've had that experience, and I've never had that from the European projects. They really listen, and they've been there for us in the journey, and they've been critical friends, like that won't work, that will be dangerous, try this and that way. And another thing is, in that first project, we did it in 2012 because it only went in the third application. So I had 2 nays to get 1 yes. And I think that's another thing is about, my mother would say stubbornness, but I would call it resilience, right? Because now everybody's very resilient, nobody's stubborn. But I really learned from each nay. I improved the project, and time also helped us. So, and of course we had the financial stability of other projects and the willpower to continue to invest. And that's, I think it's a very important part. So it's not an easy process. And when I was talking about the lack of financial reliability is, I know that the universities are very well prepared, for example, to have a project after another one, because they're really a well-oiled machine. But for us, the private agents, I make 10 applications to win 1 or 2. So I can't build my financial or professional future based on the projects. But I can learn a lot from the projects. And I can tell you that in the last year, our tribe of colleagues all across Europe, and also some in Brazil, were a very important part of our mental health survival, because we were talking about other stuff, and it meant that we were still looking at the horizon in the most horrific of circumstances. In our touristic sector at the company, and the restaurant and the museum shops, I had to fire 15 people. And I really think that if I didn't have everything that was happening around, it would have had a heavier toll in our own survival as a company. And everybody's still there and healthy. Even the people that we had to let go, they're still part of our ecosystem. And everybody takes care of everybody. So I think it's a very healthy thing. And I think that the international dimension and the shared values, it's not only about content, it's also about ideology in a certain sense. Because these are good values, what we're talking about.
Thank you. I would like now to go to Mariana Duarte Silva. She has been working in a project called School, as she told you about. And the interesting thing about this project is they're working with a university, and they're already in the mindset of putting investigation and creative industries together. And they have not applied to European funding. And so there are two questions in my question. The first one is if you can elaborate a little more on what you're doing with the university. And the second one is why haven't you yet applied to European funding?
Okay, so as I said, 2018 we started a smaller project called Acorde Maior, which were only the week of holidays for the kids. We brought them to Village Underground and we teach them, we co-teach them how to perform and how to understand and read and practice music, urban music, within a group of facilitators that were specialized in music program, music education, but with an approach that they actually learned from the Guildhall School of Music in London, which is it's oriented by, it's a non-formal music education program centered in each individual, but considering the group. So it's by project. And what we saw is that it had a great impact in every group we brought to Village. At the end, they were there for 5 days, 5 hours per day, and at the end they had to present a performance, and they had no experience, music experience whatsoever when they entered the course, and by the end they did an amazing performance. So we realized that you don't have to be music aware, you just really want to understand and to learn music so you can develop your soft skills. So we understood that this was a great project from the impact we had in the kids, in the children, from the feedback we got from the facilitators, from all the ecosystem actually. And we were only working with these facilitators from the Guildhall. They were Portuguese, by the way. And then by the 5th edition, when we were about to actually organize the 6th edition, the pandemic came. And we had to stop that edition, and I had to reframe how the project was going to happen. And instead of just quitting, I thought, let's make it bigger. Why not? So I applied for the RISE program in Casa do Impacto. That is a program that helps you make social projects sustainable, or at least try to. And so we got to enter this network and ecosystem of social impact and get to know the stakeholders and all the people involved in this kind of projects. And we found out that Portugal Intervenção Social had just opened a grant for Lisbon project, which normally doesn't happen. It's only for programs outside Lisbon. So we for the first time, we applied for a grant, and we were successful. It was a pretty hard kind of work because I have a degree in management, but to be honest, it's really hard for me to understand all the bureaucracy behind these applications. So fortunately, I had a friend that wanted to do this project with me. She's a lawyer, and she made the application. And as I said to Maria before this meeting, she said to me, listen, I go to court. I have really difficult projects in my hand, but this one was hardcore. It made her really anxious, a bit frustrated. So just to let you know that it is hard. I know you have experience now, but maybe you can think about the first application you've made. It is hard. It is quite a monster to face. Anyways, we got the grant and we could open the school. The grant got us to have another social investor, another two social investors, a bank and an institution, We got that. That was pretty easy. And then we got this funding. So we opened the school last April. We just did the first cycle. The grant is for 2 years project. And now, instead of having just the holidays for the kids, we are open every year in cycles of 10 to 12 weeks each, where we apply the same methodology. But the Universidade Politécnica de Lisboa came already in 2019 on the last edition of Accord Maior, when we tried to speak with more stakeholders. So we invited him to come and see the project. They got really interested because in the university they also wanted to work in a project that was music related, but with social impact. And so they made the application with us. They are one of our main partners, and they are doing the investigation on the methodology we used in Schoola, which is this non-formal music education based on each individual and with a group of facilitators that are both artists and music teachers. And so, yeah.
Just a question, why did you choose, you said you invited more stakeholders at a certain point. Why did you choose that specific university, Politécnico de Lisboa?
Polytechnic, because they are the only in Lisbon that has the course called Música na Comunidade, which is the course that artists and music artists take to teach these kind of music educational projects. Música na Comunidade, which is the only one in Lisbon that I know.
Okay. Makes sense.
Yeah.
Yes. So we're moving on next to André with a question. I don't know if you're aware, but the digital entertainment industry has come to a point of sophistication in terms of technological innovation, that they are now having a very relevant number of spillover effects on other industries. So they are causing technological advancement in space industry, health industry, education, and this is an industry that Andrea knows from inside out, and it's been tremendously relevant in the past decade in terms of moving forward scientific knowledge. And what I would like Andrea to help us understand is exactly how is this happening? I mean, because this is not happening inside a university. This is innovation market driven, and I think it would be interesting to understand a little more about how that exchange is happening from cultural and creative industries to more traditional and conservative sectors.
So everything started with games, obviously, and games has been helping the world to improve. A couple of years ago, like the game engine starting. Game engine is like the software that allows the game to actually works. So there is 2 companies around the world that have been investing a lot of money. Unity. It went public 2 months ago, a big evaluation, and obviously Unreal Engine. The owners are Fortnite. Everybody knows Fortnite, Epic Games. So basically, the game engine has been helping everyone to actually improve, like from the education sector, because the game engine nowadays is so sophisticated that you can replicate everything, like all the physics from the real world. So if you are a space engineer, you can use it to actually simulate everything. If you are studying biotechnology, instead of going to a lab, you can actually use Unreal Engine to simulate a lab in the real world, let's say this. And obviously, if you want to train to be a surgeon, you can actually use Unreal Engine to actually do the simulation of a real body, and everything is in 3D, so you can actually understand in a different process all the human body and all the disease and everything you need to know to. If you go to a real surgery, you already trained. But at the same level, you are going to the fashion industry that is growing a lot. So as you know, fashion industry is one of the worst industries in terms of pollution for the sea, everything. So nowadays, Unreal Engine allow you to simulate clothes in real time, and you can test in yourself in real time and see if it fits or not. The same thing for the beauty sector, like Macy's just started a project where you can simulate all the makeup real life and understand it fits on you or not, and so it's the kind of stuff that is happening. But honestly, it's everywhere. Education-wise, is booming. We are working in a project with Daimler Mercedes because they are using artists, and Unreal Engine is the artists that actually work on this. It's not something you study in universities. Actually, Epic Games, they started like a huge project. We are talking about billions, literally billions, to have Unreal universities around the world. So they are investing a lot of in Africa, for example, in Asia. So you have a lot of and they are using the Unreal Engine knowledge to build new ecosystem for the cultural industries, for the digital entertainment industries, and everyone around the world is actually making money or improving their lives because of this. And to find Unreal Engine artists nowadays, it's super hard in a way. It's and it's the kind of stuff they don't teach in universities. It's like being an artist. You learn by yourself, in a way.
Thank you, André. I know I'm the mod.
What? You teach? No, that lucky them.
He's an engineer. Ignore him.
So
I teach myself. I learn myself Unreal Engine.
But you can no longer say that it's not learned in universities.
No.
There you go.
You don't have like a curriculum nowadays. Like they have a couple of stuff. Like I know Técnico and Nova, they start doing this, but it's not integrated with with everyone. Let's say this. The ecosystem is not working together. I will. Okay, let's do it.
Good. I like this
Or
already.
step outside also, it will work.
Let's do it.
So this is one of the intended results, is that we could, generate a conversation, and we'll go into that in just a minute. I know I'm the moderator, but I have a question for myself. And this is the reason I want to share this is because I would also like to have some feedback and input from the people in the room. So working in public policies and trying to increase the participation of cultural and creative industries in European projects and their relationship to academia and science, their contribution to science. We have been trying to design public policies to induce that, and one of the things we did was every funding that comes out of the Ministry of Culture. For example, we have the Direção Geral das Artes, which funds artists. We try to induce that if people were applying to European funding, they would have the financing from the Ministry of Culture could act as a counterpart, as a percentage that they need. So we rehearsed this with one government agency, and we're fine-tuning this, and now we're trying to go into other agencies like the book, the agency that finances everything that has to do with books and editorial activities. Also the ICA, the agency that finances movies and cinema and audiovisual, and also Direção Geral do Património Cultural, which finances everything related to museums and heritage, cultural heritage. So we're trying to make it that Europe and Portuguese government funding are all rowing in the same direction. This is what we're doing. I'm sure we can do some more, and we're collecting feedback right now to help us design better public policies to induce participation of cultural and creative industries in European projects. One of the things we're trying to do is increase the support that people like Natália and Annie have to do their work. Like Inês said, the public servants that are educating the sectors on how to apply, who's eligible, what are these fundings supposed to do for your project. These people are really dedicated, but they're I mean, there's a limit to the number of people, and so we're also trying to increase the teams on the side of Ministry of Culture who also can provide that support and to educate them. Any other thoughts and ideas about what the government should be doing in this field, in cultural and creative industries, are more than welcome. So with this remark, I will now give the word to anyone who wants to comment, question, discuss. And this means you too. I mean, if you have any questions, please.
I think I have something to comment on what you were saying, Maria, which is, I think there's this stigma, I don't know how to say it, that the cultural projects and the creative industries are in need of EU money. But I think if we look on the other side, I think the EU people, European Union, are more in need of our projects than ever. So I think of the creative industries, of the culture. So I think the vision has to be a little bit more like, what can you do in the Gabinete and the European Union? What can you improve in order to be more present within our lives and within the people that are making the projects? It doesn't have, for me, it would be more easy if I had someone proactive from your side looking into what we are doing, instead of being us just begging for money. Maybe I'm being a bit too drastic, but you know what I'm talking about?
Like scouting.
Yes, a little bit less like scouting, like trying to meet the people, trying to, I don't know, organize some events and really meeting the people, because for every amazing application that the projects can make and actually get the funding and can get the money, then I know there's a big percentage of fundings that are not 100% given. So there's lots of money that are not being used, and I hear this from ministers, from cabinets, from, oh, there's this money that we have to apply because there are not enough projects. Well, but so why don't you do an effort to go and find the projects and give a hand, instead of just being there like, come and ask me the money?
Actually, Annie over there, this is the first time that Horizon Europe has a cluster of financing for cultural and creative industries. Yeah. So it just opened on the 22nd, the calls for cultural and creative industries to apply to Horizon Europe. This has never happened before. And Annie has organized, I don't know how many sessions you know, providing information to the industry. It is a very difficult sector to map and find. A lot of people from cultural and creative industries live outside the system, and finding them and approaching them and briefing them is sometimes tricky, but that's the effort, absolutely. I couldn't agree more.
Because we are maybe the tough group of people to get in touch with, so there's an extra, that's an extra effort that the government should make and the policymakers should make.
Can I say something?
Sure.
More controversial than you, I think that one of the big problems that we have in Portugal, and first, what Maria was saying is true. Before there was cultural Europe, now it's within Horizon 2020, which is good news for everybody, including my side, the academic side. What I think is missing is a tradition of the academic system, because in many other projects, we go and we do that job.
You find
not the
the
government.
partners, you find the
because my funding, for me to have students, to have labs, I need to find partners to, you know, to propose good projects. And I'm a computer scientist, like I've said, and I love the creative industries, as I think you've noticed. And so I'm always looking at partners that have good ideas, so I can apply my technology and give them the responsibility to find uses for my technology. And that's a niche which has been very successful in my research team. And so we do that work. What I think is missing in Portugal is, I don't know if anyone here is from the School of Fine Arts of whatever university, the School of Architecture of whatever university. That's what's missing. It's missing. The academic sector in Portugal in these areas is not competitive in writing proposals, so I said it.
Yeah, but that is true. It's like common since I found this. I was the founder of a computer graphics school because I was in 2008. I was the founder. I was the co-founder of a school called Odd School. That was literally the first school that we start to talk about things like, okay, this is concept art. This is 3D modeling. This is not just whatever they were calling at the time, or I remember Flag or Restart. They're saying, let's learn 3ds Max for 30 hours. And I know that 3ds Max is a complex system that you actually, to learn, you need like 300 hours. And they were selling like that because it's selling.
Yep.
In my side now, if I had to hire 10 good 3D artists, well, because of my network, it will be quite easy, but without my network, it will be quite impossible. Because there is no schools around. There is no art schools, and I said this public several times, including to the minister, that, for example, a school called Yad was my school. The curriculum, if you just go to the curriculum they had, it's a bit of a crime, because what they are saying, it's a lie. And you just go abroad and to UK or Italy, for they have a really cool school there, or United States, so you can all balance, and you see the curriculums. They have some credibility, and you go to the curriculums in Portugal, and you see that is a lie if you are into the industry. But my questions for you is, how can we change this? Because I've been trying in the last 20 years to actually change the education system in Portugal. I actually change a way, but the big academia, like the universities, they don't even care, because they don't ask the companies what they need. If they ask the companies what they need, they probably will realize that all of us will say the same. You don't prepare no ones to be able to work with us. So.
No, but I think that, again, Mariana said it when she said she works with the Polytechnic Lisboa. That's what I think you were working with. I think that's exactly the type of school that we need to have. And these schools many times are thought as second-hand schools, and they are not. They are very important. They have the vocational programs that you need to get the people, because in Técnico, in my program, we have a specialization in our master for games, which is very successful, but we are not training people that build, that do the art, that do the assets of the game. We are training engineers. It's different. People that will be able to design new games, but not necessarily related to the content. And I think what's missing there again is a strong vocational training that will train people to be musicians, to do, we have one of the best musicians, probably, Pedro Camacho, for computer games in Portugal.
We are really, Portugal, we are really good in everything.
Yeah.
That's not the issue. We have really, I'm a big advocate of Portugal and a big advocate of Portuguese. But even myself, to actually be successful in Portugal, I had to leave Portugal. So I had to become a foreigner. And now I can say that I have some success because everyone treats me as a foreigner, correct? So, but I had to spend 2 years abroad, not spend 2 years abroad, I had to do a main event abroad for 2 years, spend a lot of money, lose money, had a terrible life for 2 years to actually be respected in my own country. Like, it's crazy. But my main goal now that I'm returning is actually not being afraid to express this. The schools in Portugal, the academia in Portugal, especially the art, and tell me one that is good, and I will give you a big hug. They are really, really bad, and it's not even like there's no doubt about this.
Andrea, I don't mean to discredit what you just said, but I think your experience with universities, when you approach them 10, 12 years ago.
That was 2 years ago, 3 years ago.
Go visit Nuno.
No, that is the technical. What he's doing, like, I know what he's doing because I think he's Rui Prada. Rui Prada is in a master. So even if I know what you guys are doing, I still don't approach. I'm not into like the approach you guys are taking in a way.
It is Rui Prada, which by the way is not in my group, but Rui Prada is an AI person. He develops AI.
I know.
He's not someone that builds games.
I agree. That's the difference.
I think you need to take it outside.
No,
because
Really, I'm with you.
We have another question in the back of the room.
It's hello everyone. It's actually not a question. It's just a comment. My name is Teresa, and I work at the Ministry for Science, Technology and Higher Education with Minister Manuel Leitor. And I just to highlight one comment regarding the novelty and the impact that the new call for Horizon on creative and cultural industries, the new kick on the European Institute of Technology will bring for the culture and creative industries. So this is really a new timing for the sector and for the collaboration, we hope, of academia, polytechnics, universities, research institutes, and the sector. I really do think, and I'm a strong believer, that from now on, things will definitely change. And I think things are already changing by this approach that we see with our colleagues from Ministry of Culture and us working together. Just by having a session like this in Ciência 2021, it's the first time that has ever happened. And I think it really is the motto for what's there to come. So my message for everyone in the sector, not just from the cultural and creative industries, but particularly for polytechnics, research centers and universities, is to talk to each other and network. Network not just nationally in Portugal, but particularly network at international level. And if there's one thing that your sector does very well, is networking. Not just nationally, but also internationally. All my friends, colleagues, partners in crime, they all have very strong networks outside the country. So let's use them. It's really important. It's really important also for Annie, and thank you, Natália, for being here, for Annie to also spread even more this word, that it's so important for the sector in Portugal to have partners, because without partners at a European level, they will be very difficult to find funding. So it's really important to have partners in different countries in Europe. There's the funding here, there's the will, there's the political will, both at European Union, at national level, for this to move forward. So I would say, let's just go out with it. Let's just go, engage, network, and really talk to each other. Because I think the moment is here. There's a lot of money involved. We just, 2 weeks ago, we had a session that we've promoted as part of the presidency with the European Parliament and the European Commission, where it was announced there's 2 billion euros involved. Obviously, all over European Union, but we need to really engage with each other. We really need to go outside Portugal and talk and network. So thank you. It was just a comment, so just...
No, thank you. We're going to wrap up with Natália now, but I just want to take a moment to say that it was really a pleasure to be involved in the first session about cultural and creative industries that has ever been held in this conference. And my wish for next year is that this session has a full room in the audience. And one last note to thank the three of you. You were great. Thanks for being here with me.
Pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Maria Miguel, and Inês, and André, and Mariana, and thank you very much to Nuno and to Nancy and Teresa for your words. Were very, very timely and very good, and let's take this challenge. And we are, of course, as Maria Miguel mentioned, we are doing the best we can to spread the word. We have organized many sessions. We will continue doing so. My colleague, Margarida Oliveira, is now in the room. And between the two, we have been setting up all these information sessions, and we are more than happy, as I said before, to help you to succeed in Horizon Europe. And there's lots of opportunities. And of course, this is not confined only for these 2 first years. Now, We have a work program with all the topics for these 2 years, but don't despair if the topics are not related with your work or with your ideas, because this is 7 years. It's a running, a marathon. It's not a sprint. So there is more time, but it's good to start building your network and to look around and to think about the ideas you want to develop and to reach out, as Teresa said. And so I want to thank all the participants in the session on research and development in creative industries, the first of its kind, as Teresa highlighted, where we heard about the funding opportunities of Horizon Europe for the creative and cultural sectors. We had an insight into the very exciting Portuguese vision on the new European Bauhaus initiative. We heard about also the new European project, Uncharted, that is going to work on the shared value of culture. And we debated with our roundtable the challenges, the barriers, and the opportunities for the cultural industries to participate in innovative and collaborative projects with 3 innovators with a very multidisciplinary background. So thank you to all of you, and stay in touch with all of us in ANI and the ministry.